So first of all, I'm going to start, Penny, by saying thank you so much for a little bit of your time this morning. Everybody knows you, but just for the purposes of the tape, can you state your name and where you come from, and just a little bit about your role and the team that you look after?
Yeah, of course, no problem. Thanks very much for asking me. So my name is Penny Cole. I'm the Group HR Director for Quilter, and I look after internal comms and human resources. So that's all things people related, and I love it. It's a great job.
And how have you got here? So what are the steps that have gone through your career-wise that have landed Penny Cole here now talking to me?
Oh gosh, it's not a usual straight kind of direct route in. I took quite an odd path through into HR, and I have a real belief actually that particularly human resources is helpful when it's made up with people from various backgrounds, not just solely HR paths. And I would say that because that's not my background at all. I have worked across many industries. I've worked across telecommunications, I've worked in the third sector, I lived and worked in India for a while, and finally kind of stumbled in my kind of mid to late 20s into financial services, not intentional. And whilst I was working in an administrative role in financial services, actually I was at a team offsite and an HR director took me to one side and said, have you thought about a career in HR? And I think I'd been with the organisation a couple of months, so I was really quite new in. And I said, no. No. 3 months later, I was doing my CIPD with his sponsorship, actually. Yeah. So he clearly saw something in me that he thought would make a good HR person. I've been very, very lucky in that I've had fantastic support all the way through my career. There have been certain people that have sponsored or championed me, sometimes in the most unusual of places.
Really?
Yeah, interesting. I think you take inspiration from unusual places. Some directors I've worked with, and in the first instance, have been either terrified of or I've misjudged, and those learnings in themselves are important, but they've ended up being really quite influential on my career. I've been given opportunities.
Have you got an example of that?
So I guess a really left field person, when I was living and working in India, I worked with a chap called Dr. Jack Prager, who I was the international coordinator, so it had nothing to do with HR, though it did have something to do with HR. And what's interesting about my career is what I realised as I've got into HR is lots of the roles I did before HR had HR elements in them. So when I was living in India, I worked for Dr. Jack. He was a doctor from Yorkshire who turned up in India, in Calcutta, in I think it was 1977 or something, and was so horrified by what he saw that he turned a bucket upside down on the pavement and started treating people. And he used to terrify all of the volunteers and all of the Western volunteers that used to come over, and it was my job to coordinate on board and settle all of these people. I'd done a lot of travelling in India, so I was relatively well acclimatised. So it was my job to settle all of these Western medical volunteers who came and worked in either the 3 schools or 4 clinics in the slums of Calcutta. And people were terrified of him. And I think one of the things that I realised quite early on is actually one of my super strengths is building relationships and not being frightened of people and spending some time looking beyond the gruff exterior that sometimes you have. And particularly if you're in an environment like Jack was in, you had to kind of develop a bit of a tough exterior because what you were seeing on a daily basis needed some level of hard shell to navigate. And sometimes that's true in the corporate world too, actually, as you've gone through your career, people do develop tough exteriors, and what you see in that first instance isn't always
what you get.
Yeah, so that was obviously a key kind of bridge into HR, and not really realising that actually that was the career that I wanted. And it wasn't until I started doing HR that I realised I really, really liked it. I like people, so that makes it much easier. I guess the other key turning point for me, and I talk to our business partners about this all the time, is there are moments of expansion in your career, and as a partner to a business area or a business in itself, actually your generalist skills and knowledge are really important, but having some level of specialism is important too. So there was an opportunity probably about 10 or 12 years ago to train in cultural transformation. And I took that opportunity and did some wonderful work across the organisation. And I ended up working in South Africa with Old Mutual, with the HR team there, training them in cultural transformation. And actually that became the thing that really helped to define the bits that I specialise in from an HR perspective. So the building of leadership teams, the building of culture, the architecture that sits behind what makes successful teams and successful organisations, and then all of the levers that you use to build cultural transformation. And it really broadens your perspective. So I guess that was a key moment as well in kind of going beyond just being a business partner into a more expansive role, and gave me the opportunity to work in another country, which was wonderful. And then I guess another big key turn point was stepping out of HR. So when we at Quilter started the UK Platform Transformation Programme, Paul Feeney, Hanley Van Staden and Stephen Levine asked me to step out of HR and to lead actually a stream within PTP, running not only the people stuff but also a big chunk of the business readiness elements as well, in terms of the training of the people on technical systems that I had no knowledge of at all. So yeah, exactly. So I had a really diverse team, people that were kind of leaders in operations and some change specialists, HR people, comms people, really cross-functional team.
And quite a big moment there, because being brave, stepping out of your area of specialism, doing something different.
Yeah, I think at the time, I look back and I think, God, that was a key moment, but it felt quite natural. And I didn't know Hanley very well, but ended up working for a long time with Hanley actually, and very successfully, very proud of what we achieved. I'd worked with Stephen as his head of HR for quite some time, so I had that relationship that I knew there was a trusted relationship there. And those are the things I think that do make a difference in your career, is the people that you work with and building those relationships. I think are really important in people taking chances on you, but also you taking chances on them. And actually, I'm really proud of what we delivered through PTP. I'm really proud of the people experience that we created and how we supported our people through that. And so, yeah, that was probably another. And then, of course, this job was not expected. So, yeah, getting the tap on the shoulder and being asked if I would be interested in putting my name forward for this role was a huge, and it's been a huge learning curve. The last 12 months has been phenomenal, actually. So, yeah, those are I guess, the big key moments.
So they're all the key moments that have brought you to this moment. But what about some of the challenges along the way, some of the roadblocks that you perhaps had to get round?
Yeah, there's been loads. One of the things I love about this job and about HR and comms as a profession is no day is the same. Every day is different, and I'm a bit of a butterfly, so if you made me do the same thing every day, I'd be bored really, really quickly. So I like puzzles, I like unpacking problems, I like solving things, and as I said previously, I really like people. So it's almost the perfect thing for me. So my challenges haven't really been organisational. My challenges have been more around self-belief. I didn't go to university. When that HR director tapped me on the shoulder and said, do you fancy coming into HR and how do you feel about doing your CIPD? As a postgraduate qualification, I had no degree to bounce from. I had no experience of writing academic studies or learning in that way. And that was a huge learning curve for me. I was very lucky. I had a hugely supportive husband, but I also had a very young family. So I was doing that in my late 20s with a full-time job. So having a very supportive husband and family, lots of encouragement, and also a sponsor in the HR director who really believed in me and spent time with me, helping me to break down some of the assignments in the early days so that I actually built my confidence was really important. And I think self-belief is something that plagues all of us, actually. I used to have people assume that I'd gone to university, and actually still do. People still say, oh, where did you graduate from? And it used to, for me, be a source of embarrassment. I used to feel uncomfortable at saying, actually, I didn't go to university, and sometimes I'd just gloss straight over it. But in my family, my mum worked in Sainsbury's, my dad was a second-hand car salesman, and we didn't go to university. So when I did graduate with my postgraduate qualification, it was a source of pride for my mum. She boasted like nobody's business. And I thought that would slay the dragon. Actually, it didn't. It didn't slay the dragon. What slayed the dragon was me believing in myself and believing in the power of creating a team to make a difference rather than relying only on me. I think one of the things that leaders should and can do is really think about where their gaps are, and instead of trying to hide them, actually recognise them and make sure you've got people around you who can step into those spaces. And so, yeah, for me it's about respect, it's around backing yourself, but knowing where your gaps are and making sure that you've got the right team around you to help fill them.
I mean, you've obviously been at Quilter now for a few years.
Yeah.
So how's Quilter helped you along the way? Are there any Quilter policies or things that have happened within Quilter that have really enabled your journey and helped you build and grow?
So, yeah, I looked at this question, I thought, how do policies help me? So I think policies are important, but they also have the ability to just gather dust on a shelf, right? Policies are there as a framework which we hold ourselves accountable to, but the bit that makes the difference is the people. I listened to Karen Brady, God, I don't know, like many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, at a conference. I was lucky enough to hear her talk, and she talked about her role as a very successful woman in holding the ladder down and bringing others up. And actually I've been really lucky in having that ladder held down for me by people from across every part of the organisation. And the value actually is in recognising and using your network to be successful. So especially in the last 12 months, there have been things that have come across my desk and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this one. I think you speed dial the people that you know, like, you know, someone in IT that you know, and you go, I've got this IT thing. And actually it's amazing. I mean, even you, Holly, like, you know, we did a road trip to Birmingham for Q Live. I spent the time like picking your brain on kind of some of the risk challenges.
I was exhausted.
But it is that kind of using that network, and actually it's a give-take thing, right? So you get back what you put in, and that's true in every relationship, be that home or at work. And I believe very firmly in holding the ladder down for others, not just women, everybody actually. And the only way we will create a more inclusive environment is if we keep that ladder down and all of us have our hands either holding the bottom or at the top pulling people up. I think that's really important. So policies are important, but people are more important.
So can you tell me, I guess, in all of that, and there's some great moments, what was your most proud moment?
Do you know, I was really thoughtful about this because I've got lots and lots of proud moments.
We've got time for one.
Yeah. Oh God, can I have two?
Oh, go on then.
All right, the first one was just before Christmas. We had our team Christmas party, so the HR and Comms team Christmas party, and we did all the kind of formal sit-down meal, and they were making gingerbread houses and stuff, and it was lovely. It was lovely watching all the teams kind of, you know, coming together. But there was a moment later on in the evening when inevitably, of course, the team who had organised the event had hired a floor in a pub, and everybody went off and kind of had a drink over at the pub in this floor. And I was sat in the corner and I looked up, and all I could see was my team, masses of them, you know, just bunches of people from my team interacting across different, you know, different departments, different teams, all interacting, laughing, smiling, joking, building those relationships. And I had a real moment where I said, this was it. This is what I wanted to build. This is the kind of function, the kinds of energy that I wanted people to feel in our function. Because if the HR and comms team don't feel connected, how can we expect the rest of the organisation to feel that too? So that's been my recent proud moment. I guess the other one that I'm sneaking in is actually when we won every category for the awards that we put in for Hello Tomorrow. So Hello Tomorrow was the people strategy for platform transformation, and we put in for 3 categories in the external awards of employee engagement, and we won every single one. And I didn't expect to. I didn't think we'd win one, but winning all 3, it's got to be a career highlight. Yeah, that was great. So those are some of the moments.
Well, 2 really special
things
there. I can really imagine that. So just for those people that are watching, final takeaway question. What is your one piece of advice for people listening if they want to make the most of their career, make the most of their strengths? How do they get on? One top tip from you.
Okay. Worry less about titles and status, more about content and relationships. if you've got the right network, the right relationships and the right content in your role and you're loving what you're doing, your career will grow as a consequence.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, Penny. It's
You're
been
welcome.
brilliant talking to you.
Thank you
really
very
interesting.
much. Cheers, Holly.